So welcome to the State Regulatory Focus section. I'm Kate Blystone. I'm the Outreach Manager for the Pipeline Safety Trust, and I'll moderate this panel today. You might sense a theme on our agenda. Earlier today we heard from nonprofits and what do they want, NGOs. And now we've made time for state regulators. And state regulators do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to pipeline safety, and we thought they could offer their perspectives on, overall pipeline safety issues, emerging issues, and how they're handling them. So I'm going to introduce all our panelists, and then they'll come up one at a time, and then hopefully we'll have some time for your questions as well. So first up, we'll have Pete Chace, who is the Gas Pipeline Safety Program Manager at Public Utilities Commission of Ohio. And he's also NAPSR's newly minted National Chairman. Yes, and so then next we'll have Ken Bruno, Program Manager for the Gas Safety and Reliability Branch of California Public Utilities. And the final speaker will be Joe Leckie, Pipeline Safety Program Manager for Idaho Public Utilities Commission. Take it away, Pete. And this should pick up. It's just when people are loud in the audience.
Thank you. We're all about staying on schedule, so let me just jump right into it. First off, Pete Chace. I run the Pipeline Safety Program section for the state of Ohio. And as Kate mentioned, I'm currently the chairman of NAPSR, National Association of Pipeline Safety Representatives. What we do, it's an organization of all the state programs. I think Alan in the other room mentioned 52. That's because a couple states have a liquid program and a gas program in separate buildings. So you count them all up, that's what you get. NAPSR members, and we have a rotating basis. Everyone has to take their turn. This year it's my turn, and then next year whoever overslept the board meeting or wasn't paying attention when they asked for volunteers is going to be the chairman. So that's how it works with NAPSR. And what we're about is our purpose is to talk both amongst ourselves and with the federal and with PHMSA, to try and all stay on the same page, stay focused as far as what we're looking at with pipeline safety. NAPSR members regulate over 80% of the regulated gas piping in the country. Most of it is distribution piping, which the federal government PHMSA doesn't really do. We also have a number of intrastate transmission lines regulated directly by the states, not the feds. So we have about 80% of the regulated piping, about 2/3 of the inspectors out there in the field. So we do have a big presence. So what do we want? Let's find out. I want to know how to use this. First, NAPSR priorities, and I was going to, well, I've got them listed here. As far as the NAPSR board, we've talked about it. This is what we want to do this year. I'm going to just briefly go over them and just get into a little bit further as to why they're up on the list. First, continuation of, they call it the federal-state partnership for pipeline safety is, I don't know how much of a, it's kind of a partnership. I mean, if you look at how it's set up, the application of the golden rule is that PHMSA's got the gold and they give it to us to do, pipeline inspections for them. So they're kind of, I don't know how much of a partnership it is, but it is as far as figuring out policies for the states and such. And it's important to NAPSR that we have a good, positive working relationship with PHMSA. I think we do. This is the first time since I've been in the program there's going to be an administration change in the federal level. And who knows what's going to happen with NAPSR leadership, PHMSA leadership as we go forward. But it's important to us that we want to work with PHMSA and continue to have a positive working relationship with them so we can all be on the same page, get pipeline safety done. Help operators understand and comply with recent or prospective rule changes, and as we've talked about in other sessions, there are a number of them. Continuing to improve state damage prevention programs. Damage prevention, excavation damage is the top threat to pipeline safety. Something, such as San Bruno, maybe that wasn't the case there. Made a big fireball in the news, bad thing. But you look all across, all the smaller things that happen, damage prevention is the top threat. Since I've been the program manager, I've lost 3 people, 3 fatalities. 2 of them were due to somebody digging outside of the house with a backhoe without calling the one-call number. So damage prevention, important, and furthermore, it looks like we're actually getting better at it. So that's a good thing. Prepare for congressional mandate for a national integrated pipeline safety regulatory inspection database. We view that with a little bit of apprehension. All the states, we've got our own systems, we write our own inspection forms, we've got our own processes, and asking us to get all on the same page, it's a little daunting. We want to make sure that we are involved at the beginning of this process and not the end, to make sure that whatever IT type products come out are going to be something we can actually use. Continue to promote safety management systems, I'll talk about that as well, and advocate for state program funding. No one from PHMSA is actually here, are they? That's something, oh, there are a couple of you, okay. All right. I was wondering, I looked around and I didn't see, but that's good that you're here. As the rules get big, for example, transmission gathering, it's going to add assuming regulation of gathering lines goes through, it's going to add a huge amount of regulated piping onto our plate. We want to make sure that we've, quite frankly, received funding appropriate to the workload we're asked to take on. So, incident trends. I want to talk about this a little bit and how this maybe describes our decision making. So, first of all, this is something I got off of the PHMSA website, but it's a 20-year trend. And most states only have natural gas programs. I don't know how many liquid programs there are. I think there's about 10. So the majority of states, how many? There's 4. Yeah, there's somewhere between 4 and 10. And so most of our attention really is on natural gas. And what this is a graph over time of what is referred to as significant incidents. For orange is distribution, and blue is transmission. Over the last 20 years, couple observations I have on that. Can be tough, I think, looking at some incident data because the definition of incident has changed once. PHMSA has changed the way they want incidents reported on 2 different occasions, and I can tell you for a fact that gas operators are reporting things as incidents today that they would not have reported 10 years ago. So it can be difficult to learn a lot from these long-term trends. But having said that, I don't know if you can say things are getting any better. I don't think they're getting worse. It looks to me like we're kind of treading water. We're keeping a lid on the problem, but we want to do better. And how can we do better? Well, let's take a look as we go on. If you look at distribution, maybe it's drifting down a little bit. If it is at all, I think it's entirely due to improvements in damage prevention. Transmission, you can see it's kind of trending up. And then if you look at and we'll look at why as we go on. So this graph just looks like a bunch of spaghetti I threw on the wall. But let me kind of walk you through it. Incidents, significant incidents by cause. This is for distribution systems. If you look at that top orange line, these are all broken down by different causes. See if you can guess what the orange is. I think I tipped my hand already. Damage prevention, right. The biggest threat to pipeline safety, is particularly distribution systems, is the backhoe. It's the top threat, and as I'll go on saying, it looks like there's something we can do about it. Now, how about that green one, the second one there? I heard corrosion, but that's actually not right. It's called other outside force damage. In other words, cars. So if backhoe is the top threat to distribution piping, the car is the second biggest threat. Now, the pipeline safety regulations say you have to protect facilities against, I think, reasonably anticipated vehicular damage, but the world is full of unreasonable people. And I have seen some real Dukes of Hazzard stuff out there you wouldn't believe. So that's really is a threat as well. These are significant incidents. If you look at incidents that have led to injuries or fatalities, you'll see the same thing. Vehicular damage, it's something that needs to be looked at as well. So what about, I keep talking about distribution, and you can see evidence, I think, everywhere. Common Ground Alliance, on PHMSA's website, that things are getting better with damage prevention. This is just a graph of excavation damages per 1,000 locates taken off of operator annual reports for the state of Ohio. And you don't need to be a statistician to see that, yeah, it looks like things are getting better. So that's good. I think we should continue to chase success. And one of the things PHMSA is doing is the damage prevention rules recently come about. They're out looking at states to see if they're adequate or inadequate as far as the damage prevention. In my opinion, it's been a good way to push some states, Ohio included. We did not have damage prevention enforcement provisions in our law until just this year. And it's been a nice little push to help some of us get some of these damage prevention improvements to our laws in place at the state level. So we feel that's important. We want to continue to chase success. This is something where we can see that things are actually improving. So, God, what's this? Significant incidents by cause for transmission systems. So the yellow line on the top, that's the biggest threat, and they call it material weld or joint failure. So that's like cracked welds, hardware on the pipe failing. And then the second is corrosion. So transmission lines typically, built out of steel. Distribution, there's a lot of plastic, and that's increasing as we go along. These are what the risk assessors call time-dependent threats. So in other words, the older the pipe is, the more you may tend to see something like a cracked weld, something like a corrosion start to impact the pipe. And although, like I said, I think there's more incidents being reported now than there were 10 years ago, it does look to me like those are the primary threats to transmission piping. Now, if you look at this, let's go to transmission. This is a graph of transmission lines by decade of installation. So you'll see here most of the pipelines have been put in from 50 to 59 and 60 to 69. And I still remember this. I went to, PHMSA has training classes that we all go to down in Oklahoma City. We learn about this stuff, and I recall one of the instructors talking about a pipe. We were looking at a model problem, and the pipe was dated 1968. And he paused and he said, "You know what we call that in the industry? New pipe." And in some sense, it's true, because piping built in the 60s, that's when construction techniques started to get better. But still, there's a lot of old pipe in the ground. And now, just because something is old doesn't mean it doesn't still work or isn't useful. I know that'll come as a relief to many of us in this room, myself included. But, and that's what this risk assessment, integrity management stuff is about. You want, instead of just writing off whole categories of old pipe, let's try and get a little smarter about figuring out where the higher risks are. So instead of just saying all piping before 1960 has got to go, let's look at it and focus a little smarter on what we can do. But having said that, maybe if you've got some piping in the ground from the 1930s that's put together by couplings, maybe it's time to upgrade. So there's that for transmission line. And you see distribution line, there's older pipe there too. There's a big category for unknown, and that's certainly an issue as well. But I think nationwide you'll see a lot of utility commissions going forward and approving infrastructure replacement projects. Certainly we see that as a good thing and something we'd like to see continue. In Ohio, we've trying to put increasing effort on taking a look at those new projects and making sure that all those joints, those welds, those mechanical components going into the ground are put in correctly, and we don't have to worry about looking at this graph 50 years from now saying, oh man, if only that Chace was on top of things, then we wouldn't see all of these material weld or joint failures.
It's important to distinguish general distribution from distribution mains. You might want to talk about
That is true. Yeah, distribution lines are broken down into mains and services. This is distribution main. Service lines, sometimes they're replaced with the main, sometimes they are not. I don't know if you add anything further. Okay. So safety management systems. We've seen a lot of talk about that. If you're already familiar with it, you're just going to have to ride this one out, because I'm going to talk about it a little bit. And it's not really a regulation, it's a process or a mindset. And the idea is that, well, let me give you an example. There's the safety management systems wheel. right? And how this is supposed to work, there's a planning phase, a doing, check, and act. So let me give you an example. An Ohio operator, I'm not going to tell you which one, but this was actually prompted by an incident they had where there was excavation damage and a condo got burned down. But they took a look at their damage prevention program, and they kind of thought, well, why are we having problems with damage prevention? First, we're going to plan, and the first thing we're going to do is look at, instead of just saying when we get a damage, we say, oh, third-party excavation damage, those darn excavators didn't do what they were supposed to do. Instead, they went and started investigating all these damages to see what the root cause was. So that's the plan. So how many ways, what kind of ways could a damage prevention incident happen? Then they went out and did it. They took a look at all their damages. Oh, this one was because that guy didn't call. That one was because our map was bad. This one was because the markings washed away because the excavator took too long to show up. And they gathered all that data and they took a look at what they had, and then they checked. Well, where are our big problems at? Well, it turns out that for this operator, they had contract locators, and what is supposed to happen in Ohio law is if you're out at a site and you cannot find where the piping is, you can't get a tone on your electronic detection machine. It's called a no-tone. You're supposed to report that to the excavator, say, hey, be careful, we don't know where the lines are here. That wasn't happening because the operator thought the contractor was doing it, the contractor thought the operator was doing it. It wasn't happening. So they fixed it. They rewrote their contract, and now they see their excavation damages coming down, big success. So they're all done, right? No, they're not done. Remember, the wheels on the bus go round and round. They start again. All right, well, we solved something, and that's great. Now we're going to find the next problem. We're going to plan, we're going to gather our information, we're going to check, we're going to figure out what went wrong, and we're going to fix that, and then we're going to do it again, and we're going to do it again. It's a mindset, like I said. We are trying as a state to figure out how to promote safety management systems without, the regulation. There's a flaw in safety management systems, right? It says promotes a safety-oriented culture, and there's a lot of talk about management commitment. How do you regulate, how do you force management to commit? Now, let me tell you real quick, because I know I'm running short on time. I don't know one single operator that wants to blow up their customers, okay? And in fact, since I've gotten into this, I've been fairly impressed with how seriously operators do take safety. But if I could use an analogy, I will. As far as personal finances, I try and pay my bills on time, and pretty much do. Got a decent credit rating. But once about 3 months ago, I bounced a check, just because I wasn't paying attention. Now I know that if I had sat down and kept all my receipts and balanced my checkbook, like you're supposed to do, and I don't, I would have figured out that, oh, I couldn't write that check because I wrote this other check 2 months ago I forgot about that somebody's going to cash. So just like that, I want to pay my bills, and I do, but I wasn't really down there in the weeds balancing my book, making sure everything was okay. It's the same with safety management systems. You want to be safe, but are you rolling up your sleeves and really doing the work? And part of it is understanding what safety management systems is, and part of this is us as regulators understanding it and being able to work with the operators, educate them, educate ourselves, and go forward and get this process. We think, like I said, over the past 10 years, 20 years, it seems like we've been treading water. This may be a way for us to continue to enforce that incident rate down. And with that, I think I'm out of time.